morning, everybody. Welcome. Let me mute my speakers. Welcome to session 3 here on TLDC for job seekers. My name is Joseph Suarez. I'm the guest host again for the series. Previously, we talked about moving on after being let go, how to handle being laid off from a job. And then last week, we talked about searching and applying for jobs. So I walked through my process that I use for when I'm applying for jobs, the notes I take, and how that comes in handy if I get engaged and get to the interview process. And then today, we're going to talk about resumes and portfolios. So I think the best thing to say about resumes right off the top is just to understand that when we're going through the job process, what we're doing is we're acting as a salesperson. And our goal is to make one sale, and that sale is to get a job. And I know for people like myself, it's not the most comfortable position to put ourselves in or the most comfortable mindset to be in. I didn't go into sales for a particular reason, so it feels a little maybe strange or disingenuous to kind of assume that role, but it's basically how the game is played. So recognizing that and understanding it can really help in the job process. So when we look at a resume, with this mindset, basically we can say that a resume equals your marketing collateral as a salesperson. And your goal as a salesperson distributing your resume and also your portfolio is to get your foot in the door and make the sale, or in this case, to get an interview to prove that you're the best candidate for the job. And your resume is your first attempt to do that. It's your best foot forward to represent yourself and display why you're qualified and the best candidate for the job. Now, I want to frame things today through the lens of what I think would be helpful for you going forward for all the advice that you might ever see, read, hear, whatever when it comes to resumes. I don't want to get into the weeds and say very specific tips like make sure your resume is only one page or this and that. I want to look at everything from a very high level view, and it's my goal that if I can help give you that perspective, you can then interpret things through that lens as well, and then that will help you to answer those types of smaller questions about what should I put in my resume, what shouldn't I include in my resume, and those types of things. And the way I'm going to phrase that is basically say that when we're crafting our resumes, we're actually, if we do it effectively, we are doing user experience design or practicing design thinking or any framework that basically puts the user front and center. Now, who is the user when we're creating a resume? That's going to be recruiters. That's going to be basically anyone at the hiring organization. So recruiters, the hiring manager, people on the team that you might be joining, potential senior leaders that might be looking at your resume, and one additional user that we'll get to in a moment that you might not think about, but it's very crucial. So the goal here is to practice empathy. It's really to take a moment, even though this is really all about you, it's also not at all about you. And that's really a weird dichotomy that exists when we're writing our resumes, because we need to put ourselves in the shoes of everyone in the organization, like I just talked about, and step out of our own way to then describe ourselves in a way that makes us qualified for the job. So if you remember last time, we talked about this concept of the hierarchy of needs, pun intended. So from the employer's perspective, the hierarchy of needs starts at the base. They want to make sure a candidate is qualified. Can we do the job? Do we have the skills necessary? Have we done these things in the past? If we get hired on, are we going to be able to come on and to be able to perform the roles and responsibilities of the job? Are we professional? Are we going to show up? Are we going to show up on time? Are we going to work well with others? Can we handle conflict well? Those types of things. And then at the top, are we going to be a good fit for the organization? Are we going to be somebody that the organization can invest in and become an asset to the organization over time? So that's what the employer is looking for, and that's what we need to tailor our resumes to prove. Uh, First and foremost, that we're qualified, definitely. That's what the resume is mainly for, but also that we're professional. And we do that by just showing that we have a professional looking resume that's well formatted, free of typos, those types of things, obviously. Um, and then our work history also reinforces that by showing that I have a solid work history. I'm not jumping around to different jobs after a few months. And I don't have huge gaps in my work history, or if I do have gaps, I am able to explain why I have those gaps and things like that. And less so, almost like bonus points if you're able to demonstrate somehow that you'd be a good fit in your resume. But that's more for the interview process is to demonstrate that.
Hey, Joe, sorry to interrupt real quick.
So, like we talked about last time, that's in full contrast to what we as potential employees are looking for in our needs. Obviously, we need to be compensated. A job is the way that we do things like pay our rent or mortgage and buy food and pay for transportation and those types of things. And then from there, we might have higher level needs, like we want to grow in our careers to go into better roles, entry level positions, and upward mobility or other types of things. We want to develop our careers that way. And we want probably to take some type of fulfillment over the work we do. It's something we spend most of our time on over the course of our lives. We spend a huge chunk of time working, and we want to make sure that when we look back on that time, that we can say that it was worthwhile, or at least we enjoyed ourselves for the most part.
Hey, Joe, can you hear me real quick?
So the challenge then
I guess not.
is
Yes.
to make sure we don't do this. We don't make a resume that's all about us, which sounds really strange because the resume is all about us. How are we going to be? I'm getting notes that my audio is bad, so let me
Yeah,
check.
Joe, I don't. Can you hear me at all? Check. Hello. No.
Check. I have the correct mic. I probably don't. So bear with me. Hello. In and out. I have no idea why my audio would be in and out. Does it sound any better, folks?
Hey, Joe, can you hear me?
No, I'm feeding it through my regular mic that I always do. I can switch over to something else if it's still sounding bad. Sounds like it's bouncing. That's not good.
Hey, Joe, can you hear me by chance? Sorry,
Yeah, I
I'm
can.
jumping up on screen. You can hear me? I'm not sure if you. It didn't sound like you were able to hear me earlier because I was kind of talking through a bunch of stuff. But maybe.
Yeah, sorry, I had to mute you, but
Oh.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, how does that sound?
It sounds like it sounds the same. It sounds like it's coming from the same. Test it again.
Hello. Yeah, I'm hearing like double.
Yeah, I think it seems like whatever your original source is still the primary.
Hello.
Not hearing anything.
Don't hear anything?
Still not.
Now do you?
Yeah, heard something there.
Hello. Testing one. Hello.
Yep.
Sound good?
Sounds better. Yeah.
We good?
I think that's working. Give it a try.
Okay. All right. So what did you guys hear? What didn't you hear?
I think we heard everything. It was just breaking up.
Okay.
The quality wasn't great. So I'm not sure. I mean, you could ask and see if everybody wants you to go over the the last 5 minutes or so again, but I could hear everything. It was
Okay.
just hard to hear.
All right. So let me try and summarize everything I talked about up to this point. So basically, what I was saying is our role as a job seeker is to basically become a salesman and make one sale, and that sale is to prove, or that sale is to become the job candidate, to prove that we are the right candidate for the job. And we do that with our marketing material, which is our resume, and if applicable for the role we're applying for, our portfolio as well. And what we want to avoid is creating a resume that's centered around us and more centered around the employer, specifically the employer's needs. And that's really hard to do because the resume is a document that's all about us. So, how do we make sure while we're talking all about us that we're actually making sure we're talking about the employer's needs? So, that's where we are now. We want to avoid talking about um, or just being us centric in our resume and making sure that we're being specific to the role that we're applying for. That everything we talk about when we're talking about us and what we've done, our work history, applies to the role that we're applying for. So the end goal will kind of look a little bit something like this. We have the employee's needs, the employer's needs front and center, but we allow ourselves to still be visible in the background. We can still shine through. And if we have something like a personal brand that's applicable to the role that we're applying for, that is able to shine through. But we always want to keep the user's needs in mind. And in this case, the users are who we talked about. I mentioned that it's everyone that's involved in the hiring process at the organization. So that's recruiters, um, the hiring manager, people on the team that the role is involved with, senior leaders potentially that may have approved that this job be posted. And there's one more hidden user that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. So all these questions that you might have about what to put in your resume, how long it should be, how it should be formatted, what about this and that, all of that, I want you to filter through what I just talked about. What does the employee need? Or, I'm sorry, what does the employer hiring manager need in this role? And how do you fit that? That's basically the point of your resume, and that's how you craft your resume. Now, the challenge then is okay, if I set out to do that, does that mean that I'm creating a custom resume for every application I apply for? Not necessarily. The ideally, no, you shouldn't have to. But then again, not having a job is basically a full-time job in itself. So if you want to go that route and put that much effort into it, you definitely can, and it may benefit you in the long run. But I think the more effective use of your time is to go back to what we talked about last time about casting a tight net at first, figuring out, answering those questions that we went through, and figuring out what is your ideal job by answering those questions, and then tailor your either your one resume or your main resume to that ideal set of jobs or job that you want to apply for. And then uh, if you aren't having success finding those jobs, then you start to widen your net, and then maybe you start to have two or three resumes that um, you're maintaining. So, as an example, let's say I'm really interested in getting a learning experience designer role, and traditionally I've been an instructional designer. I may have one resume that says right at the top that I'm a learning experience designer and I want to include everything in my history that talks about my experience with user experience design and all the different things that make a user or learning experience design role unique versus instructional design. And then contrast to that, I may still be applying for instructional design roles where I don't necessarily want to focus on that learning experience side of things as heavily. So I may reword things in that resume, and it may say that I'm an instructional designer at the top. The more resumes you have like this, it can benefit you, but then again, that's more resumes you have to maintain and you have to keep straight. And here's the caveat is you get to maintain as many resumes as you want, but you only get one LinkedIn profile. So you may be able to spin things certain ways on your resume, but you can only put things into words one way on your LinkedIn profile. So keep that in mind and make sure that you're not deviating so far from what's in your profile that when a potential employer looks at that, they're like, well, wait a minute, this says this and the LinkedIn profile says that. What's going on here? So keep that in mind. So I talked about all the different users that we're thinking about when we craft our resume. That we put ourselves in we put ourselves in their shoes and we think about what their needs are. But there's one I didn't talk about, and it's a very important one. And it's not one people consider. It's definitely one I didn't even really know that much about till fairly recently. And that is the robots. They are taking over. You have to get past the robot, aka the applicant tracking system. So unless you're applying for a job that is at a company that's extremely small, you're going to be working with recruiters. And unless they are way behind the times, they're going to be using some type of system to manage all the applications that they're getting. Because pretty much every job that gets posted nowadays gets hundreds and thousands of applicants, and they a recruiter cannot spend all of their day going through those. So they need some type of way to, at the very least, filter out um, the noise, the people that are applying that really have no business applying that aren't in any way qualified, and they do that with application tracking systems. Now, what does the robot care about? Well, the robot's mission is to filter out those poor candidates and only let the recruiter see what it considers to be qualified candidates. And there are here's the thing about these ATS. I don't want to say ATS systems because it's in the acronym. Um, each one is different. So I mentioned there's Taleo, there's Workday, there's some other ones. They all have their quirks to them. They all do things differently, and they all could change at any moment, or depending on what version the employer is using. So you have to consider that and be careful that you don't try to stuff keywords into your resume or things like that that might work now, but might actually get you filtered out later on if the system were to change. So the challenge then, I think, is best summed up by what is arguably humanity's greatest artistic achievement. That is 2010's Tron Legacy. And if we've learned nothing from that movie, it's yes, that de-aging video effects were not that good a decade ago, but also that don't trust the software to run things. We can't just put software in charge. So hopefully people got that reference. Um, if the applicant tracking system has too much power, it's going to filter out good candidates for slight infractions. Um, so say you don't format things right, or say you format things in a way that it completely misses your, it throws your job history into your education or vice versa, or something you didn't intend. If you don't format things in a way that it likes, it can easily do that. So you really have to be careful, and you have to follow these rules, which aren't really stated anywhere. You really just have to do your own research and see um, what these systems like and don't like. So the way you find that out, obviously, you can go online and look things up, and I'll give you a few tips here in a minute. But you'll know when you're doing it right when you go to apply for a job online and you upload your resume and it automatically fills in the forms as they should be. So it's putting your job history incorrectly and it's picking up all the different roles that you have and things like that, and it knows your education and and everything's filling in the way it's supposed to. If it's not, if it's all over the place, that's a great indication that the robot doesn't like you, or doesn't like how you formatted your resume. And not only is it good to um, please the robots by having something that it can read appropriately, it also saves you a lot of time that you're not going in and having to fix the form over and over again for every job you apply for. It's picking those things up and it's making your job a little bit easier as well. So my biggest recommendation is to go research ATS, application tracking systems, and figure out what they like and what they don't like. But just some high level stuff is just understanding how they work. They are basically scanning text. They love plain text. They don't like things that are more complicated than that. But the world runs on things that are slightly more complicated than that, specifically word processing documents like Word. But they absolutely hate PDFs, because when you think about it, a PDF is not really a text-based format. It's something that's just way beyond that. It's a bunch of gobbledygook. It's best for print, and it's not great for machine readable applications. And by extension, they also don't like images for the same reason. Um, they they may, or maybe the more advanced ones do actually have some kind of optical character recognition where they're trying to read what's in images that you might have in your resume, but for the most part, right now, they just basically ignore images, which if you want to be creative, you can use that to your advantage, and it's something that I actually use in my resume. Um, but be careful with that because, again, these systems might get smart and actually start to read what's in images eventually. So the best advice I can, well, I'll give it to you in a minute here, but yeah, these things look for good keywords and they try and filter out bad keywords. So if I'm applying for a job, one of the things that I heard was to create a word cloud, and you can find like word cloud generators online. Just copy the job description and paste it into a word cloud generator, and then see what those big words or the terms that are used the most often that appear in the word cloud to be the largest. Look at those that show up, and then those forms your keywords that you want to make sure you're putting in your resume. Now, you want to be careful that you don't overuse keywords as well. And what is the limit that when you're overusing keywords? I don't know. And it could be different for each application tracking system. But from what I've read and heard, that you can overstuff keywords, and that could be a negative thing, and it can get you filtered out. So be careful about that. So it's just some quick tips because it's a text scannable thing. You want to keep your resume in Word format, and that broke my heart because I nicely formatted resume that I send or used to send as a PDF. And if you were to look at that in Word, you would see how ugly it is and how I created it. It's just text boxes everywhere. It looks pleasing to the eye, but to a text scanning robot, it's complete garbage. So you want to keep the formatting simple. There are some text formatting rules that it helps to follow, such as making sure you fill in all the dates. So if you're in your current job and you want to say, I've been here from 2019 to now, you don't want to leave that now empty. You want to actually write to present. Um, just these systems can get caught up in the littlest things like that. Similarly, if you were at a company and you had multiple roles, trying to parse out those roles into separate sub roles, the system might get confused. And yeah, just little things like that. Look it up and make sure your resume is following those rules. Because the goal here is to get past the robot. You're not applying to be the best text formatted resume. You're trying to get past the robot to get your resume in front of a recruiter. So you have to play this game where you have to create a robot friendly resume, but it's also something that's still visually pleasing enough. So when it finally gets in front of people, you're still meeting all those needs that we talked about earlier that the employee wants to see in a candidate. Okay, so we talked about user-centered resumes and making sure that we are pleasing all these people and robots as well. Okay, I'm going to take a break because I see there's a couple questions in the chat here or the Q&A window. Resume versus LinkedIn profile, differences and similarities. So I talked about this a little bit. The LinkedIn profile, you only get one, and that's your public-facing view for everybody. The resume, you get a chance if you need to or want to tailor um, for specific roles if you want to. You also get to format things the way you want to. You're not stuck with the way LinkedIn formats things on the page. The advantage of LinkedIn is you can supplement your LinkedIn profile with additional things like that LinkedIn offers, like recommendations you have from other people, recommendations you've given for other people that kind of shows that you're a nice person. Um, all those different additional things that LinkedIn offers. You can add media and links and all different kinds of things. So there's advantages and different disadvantages to both, but the main advice would be to make sure you have both of those are looking good. Oh, Kara asked cover letter to not to cover letter. That is the question. As I said last time, I have not had good experience with cover letters, so I'm not going to come out and say don't do a cover letter. But in my experience, it just hasn't been worth it. And that's even I realized that it wasn't worth my time to write a cover letter for every job I apply for, or even half the jobs I apply for. I really reserve it for when I come across a role that I think I'm really suited for, and I want to somehow get across to the employer that I'm offering something that maybe isn't demonstrated through my resume or my portfolio. Um, so, for example, there was a user experience design role about a year ago that was like a block away from me, and I don't have the best resume when it comes to user experience design, but it was something that I was looking to get into. So I wrote a cover letter that says it basically opened by saying, "Greetings from across the street. I was just picking up my preschooler from the school that's visible from your window, and I noticed that this job was available and blah blah blah." So I was really trying to demonstrate that I'm not just someone who is applying for this job, but hey, I'm somebody that's right down the street and um, trying to personalize it that way. Now I never heard back at all. I never even got a "Yeah, we got your resume" email. So I found that for me personally, it's not worth my time to write cover letters. Now you may think completely different, and that's fine. But yeah, that's my answer to Kira's question. Ooh, great question. Have you heard of JobScan, and do I recommend it? Now I came across JobScan. If I remember correctly, it's something that can take your resume and help you get through the applicant tracking systems. I signed up for it, and I ended up not actually using it, at least not yet. So I would definitely recommend people check it out. And thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, I haven't used it. I just found that I guess I found success on my trying to beat the system, so to speak, on my own. But that's a great recommendation for people. I believe it's just jobscan.com is how you can get to that service. Okay, great stuff in the chat, guys. Thank you. So that's basically what I want to talk about today on resumes, and I want to move on now to portfolios. The goal of the portfolio is to supplement your resume. It shows that you can walk the talk, and all those things you're claiming you can do in your resume, a portfolio is an opportunity to prove it. Now, you may be applying for a role that you decide doesn't need a portfolio. You may be applying for a management position or something LMS administration, things like that, you may not need a portfolio. There's a lot of talk about portfolios, but you may not actually need one. But if you're trying to be a learning developer or you're an instructional designer who feels like they need to prove that they can do e-learning development work, which I would argue, yeah, you do if you're an instructional designer, then I would argue you definitely do need a portfolio. And just like the resume, we want to create a user-centered portfolio as well, one that's still demonstrating that we're qualified and that that we can be a good fit for the organization. Now, the good thing here is we don't need to worry about the robots anymore. The robots do not care about our portfolio aside from having a URL that goes to one. They don't care what's in it. They're incapable, at least at this point, with being able to see what's in there and really decipher what all that stuff is. Recruiters might care about the portfolio. They might not, other than if we have one or not, that they can pass on to the hiring manager. And the hiring manager definitely wants to see if we all have a portfolio, and I would review that very closely. And then you get into the interview process, other team members that you may end up interviewing with, or different senior leaders um, will want to see your portfolio as well. So a portfolio demonstrates, like I said, you're qualified, but it's like your qualifications in motion. It's demonstrating that yes, I've done these things. I have design checks, and when I say design, I whatever design is applicable to what you're applying for. So as an e-learning developer, I need to show that I have the visual slash graphic design sense of things, that my things are visually pleasing and um, meet basic graphic design fundamentals. And uh, also, what is my design style or styles that I can apply? Am I always showing the same style and what I do, or can I mix it up? Those are things I might want to demonstrate in my portfolio. More on the professional side of things, portfolio, yeah, I can put screenshots of things, but ideally a portfolio has text description that goes with it that talks through what the design process was, what thought process and creativity went into things, how involved I was in the project, and that's one of the things I really took for granted for the longest time is everything I was putting in my portfolio, aside from maybe some instructional content, I was demonstrating that, yeah, I did everything here. I took it from, excuse me, from start to finish as far as all the design sides and development side of things. So one of the things I really want to caution people is make sure the things you're putting in your portfolio are things that you worked on. And if there's something that you're demonstrating that you didn't specifically work on, that you say that up right there in the description and that you're open and honest about that. One of the things that is tricky when it comes to that, especially if you're, say, an instructional designer trying to prove that they can do e-learning development work, and you rely on some templates that you find. Let's say you're using Articulate Storyline. You um, download some of the templates, the nice, great-looking templates that they have, and then you use that as a portfolio piece. What you may be unintentionally saying is that you have the visual design skills to create a template like that, when in fact you were just trying to show that you can use Storyline. So be very careful about that because you don't want to be portraying yourself as something you're. And then you have this opportunity to demonstrate a lot of problem solving skills. Did you do some project management related to this project that you're showing? Can you display a customer centric mindset? So how did you come in and meet the needs of the customer with this project? And just your thought process into how you came about with the design and how you implemented things, how you dealt with challenges. Um, what was the time frame around the project is a big one because you could have amazing thing. You're like, yeah, this was 9 months to produce. It's like, whoa, wait, how did you end up spending so much time on that. Whereas you might not have the best looking thing in your portfolio by contrast, but you can, you know what, we turn this around in a week or two, and that might actually reflect well, even though it might not be the best looking portfolio. So all the questions that come around portfolios and all the issues that you hear people having, um, really, I don't want to brush them aside. When we look at the design thinking side of things, putting ourselves into the shoes of the employer and what they need, what we as job seekers need to be putting in our portfolio to demonstrate that we're qualified, it answers a lot of these questions. So
Hey,
what should I
Joe.
be putting in my portfolio? Yeah.
Joe, sorry to interrupt. We're getting drop syllables again, so maybe a refresh could be. It probably your audio is coming in. I mean, your video is coming in great. It's just the audio is starting to degrade a little bit again. So I don't know if a refresh will help or
All
something.
right. Let me give her a be right back. Any better?
Let's hear it. Keep talking.
Any better?
S- Sounded a little bit more consistent. Keep going, and
Okay.
I'll let you know.
All right. All right. Yeah, sorry guys. I don't know what's going on. I have the same exact setup as I had last week. So
Sounds great.
technology.
It sounded good now.
Okay. I'm getting some echo. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I'll keep going. So what I was saying is a lot of these issues and questions that people have around portfolios can be answered by just taking that user-centric view of what portfolios are and that we're trying to meet the uh, needs of the employer. So we're coming in and we're making sure that everything in our portfolio demonstrates that we're qualified for the job. And it answers that right off the bat. That answers the question, well, what do I include in my portfolio? Well, what are you trying to prove? What are you trying to demonstrate that you can do? That's what you include in your portfolio. And well, I don't have enough to share to demonstrate that. Well, then do something. Is looking for a job is a full-time job, and you probably have some time on your hands to create some portfolio pieces. And don't be afraid to make them as something that is clearly uh, I don't know how to explain it, but basically conceptual or um, goofy. If you do it in some way that still keeps a professional light. If you are using Articulate Storyline, there's the e-learning heroes challenges that are great for this kind of stuff. And you don't need to wait around for the most current week that's happened. You can go back and create and or fulfill any of the challenges. So go back through there and look for ones that align with what you're trying to demonstrate, and just create those. A big one is, well, what am I allowed to share? I was at this job for 7 years. I just got laid off. I have all this great work I could show, but I'm afraid that that's going to breach some kind of confidentiality agreement that I have, or something like that. I don't want to get in hot water. What am I allowed to share? Um, if you're in that position, yeah, obviously don't just be like throw online all the stuff that you worked on with proprietary information, but you can be creative. And if you manage to somehow have the source files for those things, you can create derivatives of that work that don't violate the sharing of proprietary information. Or you can basically recreate the project from scratch in a way that demonstrates what you need to demonstrate, and then you're not in violation of anything. And then finally, a more technical question, where do I put my resume? How can it be online, or do I need to not have it online? Is this something I bring to the interview? I actually have both a online portfolio and also something I take to the interviews, where it's stuff that I still feel is safe to share from a proprietary confidentiality agreement, but it's not necessarily something I want to just have up on the internet. So I take that with me into interviews if I feel it's necessary. But as far as how do you get it up online? Um, if you, it's a really technical thing, but if you use WordPress, there are different plugins and things that you can use to basically create a gallery that's worth using for a portfolio, but that's really in the weeds for most people. Um, um, that's a great question. It's something that I actually need to revisit. That I'll be honest about. Um, so let's just go there. In the time we have left, I want to show you both my resume and my portfolio. And I don't see any more questions, so I'm just going to go for it. Um, let's start with my resume. So traditionally, I had this resume that looked pretty straightforward, and I wasn't getting the right hits or enough hits on jobs I wanted to. So I came back and I'm like, I'm just going to completely redo it, make this awesome visually formatted thing. And it's what I came up with. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. But all of this was um, before I learned what I talked about with application tracking systems. So I'm breaking so many rules when it comes to pleasing the robots. So the first thing the robot sees are these images, doesn't know what to do with them, so it ignores them. I don't know if it goes here first or here. It might be smart enough to go here. It sees my name, it sees the title, and then it gets here. This is a text box. This is a text box. This is one big text box. And that's where it gets confused. These are each separate text boxes. As far as the application tracking system is concerned, it doesn't know what the heck's going on. It sees words and then it sees a whole bunch of numbers. And it's trying to figure out how these two align. It has no way of knowing that these match.
Hey Joe, is it okay if I spotlight your resume? Like just bring your video down and just make your resume
Oh,
bigger.
yeah.
There you go.
Cool. I can even zoom in a little bit. So you guys see what I'm talking about. So I have a statement at the top. I have my skills listed, relevant skills, tools, and then my job history here is on a nice timeline, which visually looks great. If this were to get in front of a recruiter or a hiring manager, I think they'd really like this. But as far as the robot is concerned, it hates this thing and it hurts my chances to even get in front of a recruiter. Or when I upload this to a job site, I need to reformat everything because it didn't pick it up and didn't fill in the forms correctly. So the way I get around it now, I don't know if I can actually recommend people do this, but I have this that I call my visual resume, and I have a text-only resume. And the first thing I do when I apply for a job is I upload the text-only resume, and I have a graphic at the top that warns somebody if they accidentally open that I have a visual resume, and it's a funny little graphic with that picture of a robot that I used earlier. Um, now is that professional? I don't know. I went back and forth on it, but I ended up sticking with it. And then I have this visual format that I use that's purely for people. Any questions about that? And one thing you'll notice is I I have a branding basically. I have this a color scheme. I have this logo for myself. And if you go out to my website, you'll see that I carry that branding forward onto my website. So it pretty much matches there what my resume is. So I have consistent branding, which um, is just good from a design sense, but it also aids in that professional. Um, it pervades, conveys that I have that professional aspect. Okay, and then this is my portfolio, and I'm just gonna say right off the bat, I've never really been that pleased with the service that I'm using here. When I created this maybe 5, 6 years ago, I just did a quick search for what are the different free portfolio services that are out there, and this is the one I chose. If I ever get a chance to redo it, I will definitely make it something that goes directly on my website. It's something that I develop myself instead of being stuck on this um, service here. Because the risk that I've now put myself in is this service could go under. This service could say, we've decided we no longer want to have free accounts. You're going to have to pay for this if you want to go forward. Or all these other risks that could really put myself in a bind just on no notice whatsoever. But what you'll see is that as an e-learning developer slash instructional designer, I'm trying to prove a few different things. I'm trying to show that I have a visual design sense of things. I'm trying to prove that I'm capable working in different authoring tools. Like I have even had some Motora stuff here from way back in the day, and storyline stuff as well. I'm trying to prove from a multimedia standpoint that I can do video. Um, and that was another challenge that I found myself in was I was doing all sorts of cool video stuff internally at my full-time job that I couldn't share. I was creating step-by-step processes that were filmed in our facilities, and I couldn't display those on my portfolio. I couldn't show those as something that I did because they were displaying things that were proprietary. So I, our local ATD group has the technology special small interest group. I always forget what the S stands for. Uh, and so I just created a quick promo video for that, and it features me and Kara North and Todd Reamer, who is the guy who runs this group. And it's a quick little kind of flashy demo that shows what we do with that tech sig. So that's the way I can put something in my portfolio. So volunteering basically is a great way to get stuff in your portfolio. What else? So here's where I participate in the Articulate e-learning challenges, and I put the one I'm most happy with at the top, and then kind of go down from there. So I love putting this together. This was really fun, and then I had fun with this one as well, and some other ones. So what am I demonstrating? I'm demonstrating that I know how to use Articulate storyline, and I can put things together that not only function but look really well, look great as well. And at this point in my career, when I add something to my portfolio, I'm not just demonstrating that I can use this tool. I'm trying to demonstrate that I can do the instructional design thinking that what goes into things as well. So I took a concept and I executed on that in a way that was both visually pleasing and functional, but also fulfilled some learning objectives. Whereas here, going farther back into my portfolio, especially this one here, where we're talking about the types of radiation, I came up with this design to show that how the different forms of radiation can be stopped by different materials. But I didn't write this instructional content. Obviously, this was the content that was created from the help of an instructional designer and then came from the subject matter expert, literally a nuclear scientist. So you want to make sure that you're clear in your portfolio that you're communicating what you did and did not actually put together. If I were to redo it, another thing I would do is put a lot of description into these things. I would talk about all those different things that I mentioned earlier. What was the thought process that went into this? I want to make it clear right up front what my role was. Uh, I want to talk about how much time it took. I want to talk about all the different things that can demonstrate that I'm qualified, I handle things in a professional manner, and that I'm someone that would be good to have on staff because I can do these things and do them quickly and do them in professional manners. So that's my portfolio. We have any more questions or anything we want to talk about? And we have a few minutes left if we want to, or we can end it short. You can type them into the chat real quick if you want. If you have questions, I'll just skim through the chat real quick and see if there's anything. Yeah. So just to summarize what I've been talking about today, there's so many there's so much advice and tips out there about writing your resume, building your portfolio. I think it really helps you just take a giant step back, look at things from a super high level view, and remember that you're always trying to frame your experience and what you're looking for into um, put yourself in the shoes of the hiring organization and what they're looking for is the best way to do it. And then that answers all these little questions about, well, does my resume need to be only one page or is it okay if it's two and those types of things. I will say, I think a lot of these rules that we've heard for so many years, I think a lot of them have their roots back before there were these applicant tracking systems where somebody was actually sitting there and had to go through hundreds of resumes and kind of was in a position of power where they were like, you know what, if I see a resume that's more than one page, it goes right in the trash. Or if I see this or that, or you're immediately disqualified. And I don't know how many of those old rules, like your resume only needs to be one page. I don't know how many of those really still apply. But specific to that rule, I say, you know what, your resume is as long as it needs to be without being excessive. So 2 pages, that's fine. And anyone, I take a position of, I'm going to be myself and I'm going to hopefully present that in a way in my resume. And if somebody has a problem with that, that's a great way. And I get rejected. That's fine because you know what? It probably wasn't going to be a good fit for me to work there anyway. Oh, ooh, we got 2 questions now. Let's see if I can get to them. How do you keep your confidence up during this process? That's a great question. This job seeking process can be an emotional roller coaster, especially when you're being engaged by different companies, maybe multiple companies at once, and you're in the second round or third round of interviews, and you think it's a sure thing, and then you've got this other thing that you're not as excited about, but you're still pursuing it because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And then you think for sure you're super close, you're gonna get hired, but then you go with somebody else. Um, and then now all of a sudden the thing that you weren't as excited about is now the top of your list. Um, so it's definitely a roller coaster. So be prepared for that. Be prepared for rejection essentially, but don't let it get you down. Keep your head up. Keep moving forward. Keep trying to always answer these questions about what is this employer looking for and how best can I come in and demonstrate that I'm the best candidate. So as far as confidence is concerned there, you know yourself best. You know what your work history is, and you know um, how you can potentially meet those needs the employer is looking for. And I'm not someone who historically has had a lot of confidence. Like I shared last time, when I started my career, I was so nervous in my interview that I had no idea how to answer the salary question. So what helps me a lot is to maybe over prepare. Just prepare as much as I possibly can for the interview. And we'll talk about this next time a lot. But when it comes to the salary question, I've gotten much better about answering and negotiating. But I still write out a full script that basically is a choose your own adventure thing that goes through the different possibilities about how the negotiation should go or could go. So I'm not just there dumbfounded, having to think of my next words, but I actually have it written out about where I'm going to go. So I talked last time, walk away number. If I get an offer, I walk away number where I'm going to just say, they say a number at or below that, I'm going to just kind of say I'm really disappointed and leave it at that and see what they say. If it's in the range I want, then I have, you know, a certain set of things that I'm going to say at that point. If it's way above what I was thinking, which has never happened to me, but would be amazing, I have to. keep my cool and not just start cheering, but stay calm and basically go through the same process to do whatever. So we'll talk about salary negotiation next time. Let me try and get this other question real quick. So if you're applying for your first job, how can I sound convincing without a portfolio? Or let's say, how can I create a portfolio to sound more convincing without any previous experience? So definitely, it's definitely a dilemma to be in, and it's one I was in for a while, where you're applying for jobs, they want so many years of experience. You don't have years of experience, but how do you get those years of experience if no one's hiring to give you that experience? So it's definitely a tough dilemma to be in. Uh, I like to say that I paid my dues by working an entry level job that wasn't really that exciting for a while to get that experience. But your question is, how do you sound convincing without a portfolio? I mean, convincing, yes, but be honest about where you're at in your career. There are things that can help compensate for lack of experience, like excitement, enthusiasm, a willingness to demonstrate that you are able to learn, and willing to learn, and those types of things. Yeah, it's not so much convincing. Hmm. It's a great question. It's something, unfortunately, I only have like a minute left. But as far as creating your portfolio, just put your best foot forward. Keep trying different things, uh, depending on what you're applying for. You know, if it's an e-learning developer position or instructional designer where you're going to be using e-learning authoring tools, go out to the storyline or the website, download a trial storyline, and crank out as many of those e-learning challenges as you can while your free trial is still active. Um, just put your best foot forward. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Uh, that ends part three. So next time we're going to be talking about portfolios, or we're going to talk about interviewing in our final part of this series. So I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be Wednesday, and I'll see you guys then.